I'm sure that cowboys are no different than any other class of people. Whenever you get a bunch of them together, there's bound to be a character or two in the bunch. Someone like this fellow that I call Cotton. The weather was muggy, temperature high, not enough wind that your sweat would dry. Kind of a day that sometimes breeds a storm. Cattle were moving sluggish and slow. Dust they kicked up was hanging low. Out in the west, some thunderheads started to form. It was dark when we reached the riverbed. We'll make camp here, the trail boss said. So we let 'em all drink and we got 'em settled down. Cook had fixed us some rabbit stew. Old Cotton was telling a windy or two, and Sammy, the night guard, started out on his round. Now, I won't say that Cotton's a liar, but every night around the fire he'd tell us stories about how the West was won. Now, I don't know how old he was, but he must have been 110 because it would have took that long to do all he claimed he'd done. Well, we spread our bedrolls out on the ground. Sam's singing was the only sound as he sang to the cattle while they laid down to rest. We pulled off our boots and closed our eyes and was listening to Sammy's lullabies, and now and then you could see lightning out in the west. Now, way out here on this western plain, there ain't no trees 'cause it seldom rains, but we was hoping that we'd get a little shower. And if we got wet, we never fussed 'cause it cooled things off and it settled the dust. And the lightning kept getting closer every hour. Then just before daylight, the wind switched and blew. We woke up and immediately knew that a real humdinger of a storm was on its way. We pulled on our boots and we grabbed our cack and threw it on our horse's back and rode out to help Sam so the cattle wouldn't stray. Well, the leaders were up and were starting to mill. We were trying hard to keep 'em still, but in the dark you hate to ride full speed. But then a bolt of lightning split the sky, and with the thunder came the cry that fills a cowboy's heart with fear: stampede. We rode hard through the rain the rest of the night. By the time they'd stopped, it was getting light. They must have run at least 10 miles or more. Their tongues were out, and they were breathing fast, but the rain had stopped, and the storm had passed. We were soaking wet and tired, sore. We were looking for something to build us a fire so we could dry out our wet attire when we noticed one was missing from our crew. Have you seen Cotton? You don't suppose he'd been run down by some of those wild steers that was running down that draw? The look on our faces was sad and grim. Lord only knows what happened to him. Had he been trampled to death in that stampede? And then the wagon came, Cook was driving, and danged if old Cotton weren't sitting there beside him. And his explanation was profound indeed. He said, "Boys, this might sound absurd, but I got caught in the middle of that herd when old Bud stumbled and throwed me to the ground. Then I spotted this tree. I wasn't hurt. Big gust of wind caught under my shirt and carried me up in that tree safe and sound. Horse got trampled by the herd. Well, I just sat in that tree like a bird and watched the cattle go by on either side. Then I climbed down, thought I'd try to find you guys when the cook happened by." We said, "Cotton, dang your ornery hide. We've listened to your lies before, and we ain't going to believe 'em any more. This story of yours will meet with much rejection, 'cause we all know out in this prairie that you can't find a single tree for 20 miles, at least, in any direction." "Oh," he said, "a tornado can do that or more. I've seen it drive a straw through a 2x4, and uproot trees, and upset railroad cars. And they say one time after one of 'em hit, the house blowed away, but the lamp was still lit, and they found a rooster in a sealed mason jar. I told you he was bad to lie. What made him do it, we never knew why, but he insisted that every word was so. But who ever heard of a prairie breeze that could carry a man to the tops of the trees? And besides that, In these parts, trees don't grow. Well, the cattle were gant, so we let 'em graze while Sammy and I went looking for strays. When off in the distance we seen a very strange sight. Sam said, "Look down that draw. What do you see?" "That sure as the devil looks like a tree." So we rode closer. Sure as heck, Sam was right. The branches were all up high in the air. No way could Cotton have climbed up there. And we commenced to wonder just what occurred. Then, 50 feet south, trampled in the mud, was Cotton's old horse, one he called Bud. We uncinched his saddle, rode back without saying a word. Not much happened the rest of the drive. We made it to town, we all survived, but there's one more thing that I'd like to mention. From that day on, out on that trail, whenever Cotton started telling a tale, I think we paid a little bit more attention.